Hi, it's Zaya, and I know one of the biggest complaints in the Genshin community ever since the dawn of time is the limited amount of resin. Players have been constantly begging for a resin increase, even in proposing some comparable solutions like increasing the resin cap or introducing new ways to get resin. But I'm here to tell you that this will never be the case in the near future, and even with the introduction of more and more new characters, hoyoverse is not planning to increase our resin pools. Let's go over the facts, shall we? Firstly, the rate of obtaining characters ever since 1.0 has remained practically the same. The amount of primo gems a player gets per patch is roughly the same across the boards, all across the patches. Sometimes we get more, sometimes we get less, but on average it's about 75 pulls per patch if you complete everything in the game, that is. 75 pulls gets you to soft pity, and this basically means you can guarantee a 5-star character every patch. Be it a limited one or a standard banner one, doesn't really matter. And the fact that there are 4 banners per patch now as opposed to 2 in previous versions doesn't mean you're going to be getting more characters. Of course, there are exceptions, but for the majority of players, if you pull on every single patch, odds are that you're getting at most 7 new characters. 3 4-star characters from the first phase banner, and 3 new 4-star characters from the second phase banner. On top, you're getting 1 limited or standard banner 5-star. Depending how lucky you get. This is all with the assumption that you don't own any of the rate up 4 stars to begin with, which is rarely the case. And 7 new characters, it was literally the same amount of characters you would have got during 1.0 or 2.0. It doesn't matter at what patch you start. So technically speaking, the rate of new character acquisition is relatively the same, and this means you don't need more resin than before to level them up because you're getting roughly the same amount of characters every single patch. And these statistics were just to illustrate you what the situation is with newer players, but if you're an older player, if you're a veteran player, if you've been playing this game for more than a year, I doubt that you are obtaining 7 characters per patch. Most likely, you're obtaining 1, maybe 2, in some cases 3, 4 characters, but definitely not more than before when you just started the game. Moving on to the second reason why the resin system will not be changed in the near future is the fact that there are more artificial systems in place that can reward you with necessary upgrade materials. For example, talents, artifact EXP, level up books, weapon enhancement or weapon upgrade materials, and more. Back in my day, I remember how much of a deficit I felt in terms of these materials, especially Mora, EXP books, and artifact EXP. And I used to do a lot of ley lines just to catch up. But now, I'm constantly sitting above 10 million Mora, even though I've been upgrading a lot more characters recently than before, and I haven't been buying the battle pass since version 4.0, and my standard for talents has increased, and right now my standard is level 9 or level 10 talents for the characters that I raise. And as you know, talents at higher levels cost a lot more Mora and talent books, but for some reason I just never have to farm those anymore. And the reason why this is because the map has expanded a lot ever since 2.0 when I started the game, and besides that, hoyoverse has added a lot of offering systems into the game, which usually grant a lot of Mora, EXP books, and talent books. Also, I feel like the events have become a lot more generous in terms of rewards.
I got you, homie!
Not in terms of primo gems, but in terms of like the actual ascension required rewards. I also want to mention that ever since 3.0, a lot more characters have come out that don't require you to spend that much resin in order to make them work. For example, Kuki, Nilu, basically all the Dendro related characters, and so the amount of resin required to upgrade a character has actually decreased a fair bit in comparison to earlier patches. Also, a lot more guides have been posted online that help being resin efficient, and so that also contributes to generally players allocating resin only to important upgrades, and therefore having more resin in their pockets. And just talking about my experience on how much resources there are in the game for free, Recently, I got Farazan C6 and decided to level her up. The only resin I really needed was for the boss, since her talents are almost useless to level up, and her levels don't affect her buffing capabilities, unlike version 1 supports like Bennett, for example. So I decided to stop at level 70, and as for her weapon, by the way, this is not an optimal weapon. I've just got this weapon lying around, it just looks aesthetically pleasing. Anyways, I leveled this weapon from level 1 to level 90 without spending a single resin, and I've never intentionally farmed for the upgrade materials. And just to prove a point, next up I decided to level up Flowing Purity, which is the Fontaine craftable catalyst weapon, and I only ended up spending 40 resin to get the weapon all the way to level 90, which again goes to show how much little resin you need in order to perform certain upgrades. And the third reason why I don't think Hoyoverse is planning to increase our resin gains is because increasing resin gains decreases playtime in the long term. Now, I know people have talked about this, that limited resources lead to FOMO and people being more inclined to log in every day, but I'm going to represent this situation in a bit of a different light. Now, let's just say you have unlimited resin, or actually be more realistic, you have twice the amount of resin per day than what you have right now. Firstly, congrats. Now you can spend more time farming for the characters you like and doing domains. But this is what people call grinding, and people don't want to be doing the same thing over and over again, even if that means you are getting more progression per day. It will quickly become a chore to actually go and spend your resin. If you don't believe me, try and do the same artifact domain 8 times instead of 4 times during a day. You don't need to claim the rewards, but you could just redo it 8 times. And you'll see that quite quickly it becomes a pretty tedious and repetitive task and pretty boring. Now, I've said 8 times because you have condensed resin, usually. But now imagine if you have 320 resin you need to spend per day, you need more crystal flies, and the odds are that some days you won't have that many. And now imagine doing 16 runs instead of 8 runs. Yeah, imagine that. Now pick a suboptimal team, for example, let's say Raiden, Noelle, Sucrose, and Kaya, and go do the artifact domains in Fontaine. And believe me, half of the player base actually uses teams like these because they're just using their favorite characters. And the reality is, it takes them like 2 or 3 minutes to just clear the domain once. Yeah, that's called hardcore grinding, because doing a domain 16 times that takes you 3 minutes is 48 minutes without like any pauses, right? But you'll be pausing to, like, you know, look at your artifacts, upgrade some artifacts, and that will take you like more than an hour per day just to spend your resin. I'm not even talking about commissions. And people enjoy doing story, doing exploration, and maybe other features like TCG or Teapot, because again, this is Genshin, this is a game for casual players, and that's why Hoyoverse doesn't want players to be grinding and feeling like the game is a chore. They want people to be playing the game like it's a game, like they want people to explore what they have in store every single patch. Now, if that doesn't convince you, let's look at a different scenario. Let's say there's a new player that joins Genshin and he has infinite resin. The way this game is structured is that the early game content is quite difficult. This leads to players being forced to interact with their upgrading systems. And this is where they are also introduced to Genshin's soft caps, which is the limited amount of resin. Now, if there is no limit, or the limit is too high, then the player technically has all the freedoms in the world to make his characters unproportionately too strong for their level of content. Basically, imagine if you could just one-shot Dvalin during your first encounter, during the story mode. Or, for example, destroy any Hilichurl camp with just one ability because your characters are just that overtuned. That will lead to players just speed running through exploration, speed running through quests, and speed running through story, and that's not really going to be that much fun for the player. He's not going to feel difficulty, and he's not going to be interacting with the game's mechanics that much. He's not going to feel challenged, and therefore he won't be learning more about the game. And this will ultimately lead to the player quitting shortly after. But if a newer player feels challenged and can't beat a boss or a specific domain, then he would need to log in tomorrow to spend some more resin, get some more upgrades, and challenge that boss again. And tada, player retention. The player retains his interest in the game. Now, besides that, one quick thing before I finish the video, the resin system right now makes you feel like you're under leveled at almost any point in the game, but it also limits the amount of characters you can level during the early game. This means you have a limited amount of elemental coverage, and this leads to daily commissions being longer and harder to complete. This leads to exploration being artificially slowed down, and the player experiences the game for longer, therefore creating more opportunities for the players to become more attached to Genshin or to the game as a whole, and also becoming a loyal customer or a loyal fan player for Hoyoverse, which is definitely what a company wants, since the goal of the company is to make profit. And they do put a lot of emphasis on attracting newer players, hence the Resin system as it currently is, with all its flaws, is perfect for the game. Now, by any means, I don't want to defend Hoyoverse, I'm not sponsored by Hoyoverse or anything, but I just wanted to get my point across. Thank you for listening. If you have anything to say or you're constantly lacking in Resin, write about it in the comments. I will be reading every message. This was Zaya. Bye.